live. The meeting agenda pack can also be viewed on the Council's website. Everyone participating in the meeting will be attending either in the Council chamber or from remote locations. Members attending remotely must keep their cameras on for the duration of the meeting. However, all attendees should keep their microphones off until invited to speak. Members and officers can indicate they want to speak by pressing the hands up button. In the event of any vote, the Democratic Services Manager will call out the names of the members who will then cast their vote for, against or abstain. Can I also ask you to put your phones on mute? If they do ring, the normal £10 charge will be asked for my charities. Thank you. Before we go into formal business of the agenda, could I kindly ask members and officers to stand for a minute's silence as a mark of respect to former County Borough Councillor Julia Williams, who sadly passed away after a long period of illness. As many of you will know, Julia was also the mother of one of our current Borough Councillors, Councillor Alex Alberini Williams. Stand for 1 minute, please. Silence. Thank you. I will now proceed to the agenda business. Are there any apologies for absence? Apologies have been received from Councillor Phil Jenkins and the Corporate Director of Communities. Anybody else? No? Oh, Councillor Tim Thomas, yes, he's got his hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Not an apologies. I'm just having a few technical problems with my camera, and I hope to resolve them as soon as possible. Maybe use another device, but I'm having a few camera problems, so just bear with me if that's okay, please.
Thank you for letting us know. Thank you. Councillor Amanda Williams.
Thank you very much. Just to let you know that if the meeting goes on, I will have to leave at 7 o'clock. Thank you.
Hopefully not. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one additional apology. Lindsay Harvey, Corporate Director of Education, gives his apologies, but is represented by Nicola Shenis, the Head of Service. Thank you.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of personal or prejudicial interest, please? Councillor Elaine Winstanley.
Thank you. I need to make a declaration of interest in items 6, 8, 10 and 11, as I'm an employee of Arwin Cultural Trust, who provide venues and services, including my Stag Town Hall and also warm hubs in libraries, as mentioned in item 11.
Thank you. Councillor Richard Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, Madam Mayor, I should say. Yes, I want to declare an interest regarding page 173, a reference to the Pencoed Road Bridge and the level crossing, for which I've been campaigning for some 15 years. And item 2 is the reference to Pencoed Library refurbishment on page 190. And item 3 is item 11 on the agenda. I was formerly in receipt of a winter fuel allowance, and I'm not sure whether I am now anymore. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Heidi Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to declare a personal interest in item 6 and 8 as my employee and organisation is mentioned in the reports.
Thank you. Councillor Mike Kern.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I will, if the meeting is still going on to 7 o'clock, I have to leave at 7 o'clock. So my apologies if you're still going on strong at 7 o'clock.
Okay, thank you. Claire, where are you, Claire? Claire Marchant. Oh, there you are. Sorry, you've got your glasses on to recognise you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A personal interest in agenda item 6 because I have a family member in receipt of social care.
Thank you. Councillor Melanie Evans.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll declare a personal interest with regards to the same as Richard Williams, the Pen Prisk Bridge and the Pen Coed Library refurbishment.
Thank you. Councillor Bill Kendall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to declare a personal interest in item E11. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jonathan Pratt.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, a personal interest in agenda item 6, as I have a family member who is in receipt of adult social care. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's all declarations of interest. Yes. On to number 3, approval of minutes. To receive for approval the minutes of the 15th of the 5th, 2024 and the 24th of the 7th, 2024. Sorry. Oh, sorry, Robert. Sorry, I didn't see you there.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, that's my fault for being a bit late. Also, I have a family member in receipt of social care, and also I'm a director of a community interest company that receives some funding from Barbo. So agenda item 6, personal interest.
Thank you. Go back then, approval of minutes. Can I have a mover and seconder, please?
I'll formally move the minutes, Chair. Madam Mayor.
Second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Number 4, to receive the announcements from myself as Mayor. I've been told I have to tell you where I've been and what I've done. I must be honest, I have, everyone I've attended, they've been all fantastic. So I've done 10 events in August and September. I haven't been able to do more than that, and Councillor Hugh David has picked up the ones that I've missed. I went to a very enjoyable fun day in Gilverchoch. Although it was very rainy, it was very good. I did food and fun sessions for our local schools. That was very enjoyable again. I also went down to see the Bridgend Tennis Club and the fantastic facilities they have down there, and it was very encouraging to see the young children as young as 4, and the bats were bigger than them, but they all had a fantastic time. I then went to the Park Slip anniversary with Councillor Hugh David, and that I found very moving. It was a very simple service, but it was very moving. I did enjoy that. I also went to fantastic foster care Wales in Brackla, and to see all the children there with their foster parents, and it was so heartwarming. It was really good. And then I went to Broadlands Fun Day, where I must admit I really did enjoy that. It was absolutely fantastic, very well organised, and congratulations to everybody concerned. I then went to a citizenship ceremony in the registry office here, and last time I went we had 16 different nationalities, and it was absolutely marvellous. It was really, and we even sang happy birthday because one person it was his birthday, so I think he'd remember that. Then we had one new temple in Aberkenfig that was extremely colourful, but I won't be having the curry again. It was rather hot. And then I ended up Tractors and Teas in Kevin Junction when I eventually found it, but that again, fantastic, very, very, very interesting, fantastic cakes again, so I'll be going back there. I then went, the last Sunday then, I went to Maesteg Town Council in a beautiful little chapel which I had not been before, and again, very made welcome, so I did enjoy that, so thank you very much for that. Thank you. To receive any announcements from the Chief Exec, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have one brief announcement I'd like to share with members. Following its multi-million-pound redevelopment, I can confirm that Maesteg Town Hall is now set to reopen its doors to the public on Wednesday, the 20th of November. The final stages of renovation work at the Grade 2 listed building are currently being completed, and the local community will soon be able to see for themselves how this historic Grade 2 listed Climby Valley venue has been transformed into an arts and culture hub suitable for meeting the needs of modern users for many generations to come. The extensive work carried out at the hall has preserved the building's unique architectural style and its distinctive archways, columns, tiling and cornicing, and they've all been restored alongside historic paintings by Christopher Williams. The main auditorium has also been fully restored so that the building can serve as a multifunctional performing arts venue once again, this time with modernised technology and facilities that will include a stage lift, dressing rooms, a bar and a refurbished balcony. With a modern glazed atrium and foyer facing out towards Talbot Street, the building now features a library and heritage centre, a studio theatre, cinema space, bookable meeting rooms, a cafe, a mezzanine bar, improved disabled access including a new lift and much more. Our partners at Owen Cultural Trust are preparing a programme of events and activities to mark the opening, and members will soon be able to see for themselves how this extremely ambitious and comprehensive project has served to preserve and enhance the building and grant it a new lease of life. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Item 5, to receive announcements from the leader, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have two announcements, but Madam Mayor, if you bear with me, I'd like to ask the Deputy Leader perhaps to read the second announcement. I just would like to concentrate and say a few words on behalf of the loss of former councillor Julia Williams.
Certainly.
So as we've just heard now in a minute of silence and respect, Julia passed away early this week, and she was a former elected representative of the Hendra ward for this council. She had a long period of illness, and Julia also, as most of us will be aware, was the partner of another former member, Ken Watts, who was, I ended up being his deputy mayor. Ken was the mayor last year of the previous council, and the mother of Councillor Alex Williams. She was elected in 2017 and served a full 5-year term as a councillor with Gent County Borough Council, during which time she played an active role on the likes of the Licensing Committee, the Appeals Committee, Colchester Crematorium Committee, as well as Scrutiny and Overview. When Ken served as County Borough Mayor in 2021, during the pandemic, Julia supported him as his consort and helped to represent the council at a wide range of events. As an extremely active person within the local community, Julia served as a trustee and member of Pencoed Miners Welfare Hall. She was also a member of Hillqueue Workmen's Club, Sports and Social Club, where she helped to arrange and support a wide range of charitable events. Julia was passionate about people, the community, her beliefs and her values. On behalf of Gent County Borough Council, I'd like to extend our deepest sympathies towards Julia's family, her friends and loved ones, and particularly to Councillor Alex Williams and Ken Watts. And I'd just like to say, the short time Julia was here, 5 years, we might have been different political persuasions, but we've thought very similar on many occasions where we said it as it is, especially in this chamber, and she'll be sadly missed. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Ross Thomas.
Thank you, dear Madam Mayor. I'm grateful to you for allowing me just a few moments to pay tribute to the marvel that was Councillor Julia Williams, the mum of one of my closest allies in the chamber and a good colleague to many. As the leader has already said, active only really behind the scenes in politics, and in particular in support of Alex. Julia came to the political fore in 2017 when she topped the poll for the Hendra ward of Pencoed. I'd often heard it remarked that she was elected not because she was a Conservative member at the time, but rather despite it. Such was her strength of principle, she didn't last long in the Tory group structure, and within weeks she took her seat at the back of the chamber as an independent with the ability to say and do as she wished, and true to form, that's exactly what she did. Fear was not in Julia's vocabulary, and she'd often be the member to ask those awkward questions, the ones that nobody really had a satisfactory answer for. There was no better example of her straight-talking scrutiny skills than when members of this council were afforded a visit from the then South Wales Police and Crime Commissioner, patiently waiting her turn to question him on policy, crime stats, finance. Nope, none of those things. Out she came with, what is the point of view and your role? It's etched in my memory as one of those political mic drop moments, and fair to say some significant time lapsed until we saw the Commissioner again in Bridgend County Borough Council. Much can be said over the passage of time about the contribution that we make to our workplaces, to our communities, and in the lives of our family and friends. Julia Schuer made her mark, and her legacy is clear. It's one of straight talking, one of fierce loyalty, and one too of a great generosity of spirit. As a politician, and I'm sure she never considered herself one of those, she was no one-term wonder. As the leader has already said, she's left an indelible print on the members and officers with whom she worked closely, on the community she served so diligently, and more importantly than anything, on the lives of those that she loved. Indeed, those of us who had the pleasure of Julia's company in whatever capacity are all the richer for it. In recent months, I had the pleasure of being a guest as Alex and Stefan exchanged vows and witnessing Julia, who knew her time was ever limited, captivate an audience with nothing but grace, dignity, and boundless love and happiness for her one and only Alexander. Julia lives on. We know she lives on through Alex. And more so, Madam Mayor, it's heartening that at times like this, we aren't Labour, we aren't Independent, we aren't Tory, and we aren't anything else. We are colleagues, we are friends, and we care. And I know the family has been touched to receive hundreds of messages of condolences from across the council and further afield. Of course, I can only really speak for the relatively short time that I knew Julia, but I know Alex will have an opportunity to speak in the weeks ahead about a wonderful and doting mum-in-law, and partner to Ken. My thoughts and those of my group, and of course across the chamber, are with all three of them. Rest in peace, Julia. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Ross. Councillor Amanda Williams.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and I would just like to follow on from Councillor Thomas and Councillor Spanswick and pay tribute to Julia and offer mine and my group's deepest condolences to both Alex and Ken. Julia was a part of my group last term. She was a force to be reckoned with. She made every single meeting worthwhile. She brightened every meeting, and particularly in the chamber with some of her comments. We gelled straight away with our love of wine after our council meetings. We'd be talking in the chats of how we were getting straight onto the glass of wine afterwards. She really was somebody I looked up to. She was fantastic. She looked out for everyone, and I would never want to come against her in the council chamber because, like I said, she was a force to be reckoned with. And I just wanted to pay tribute for my group as well, because she will be sorely missed by everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Jane Kirby.
My announcement seems really trite in comparison to all those kind words about Julia. I can't impress on you. My thoughts are with the family as well. Sorry.
Thank you.
Members will be aware that the Council is actively seeking to encourage more people to consider careers in social care in order to address a shortfall in qualified staff and to reduce the need to use agency workers. As part of this, our Adult Social Care and Employability Bridgend teams have joined forces to stage a Pathways to Care course later in the year. This year. People looking to enter the field of social care will be offered a week's worth of free accredited training, which will begin on the 14th of October. It's being held at Bridgend Halo Life Centre between 9:30 and 3, and the training will be designed to help give them a head start in their new career. It will incorporate a series of informative workshops, the chance to meet members of the team and the individuals that they support, an opportunity to gain in-depth understanding of the expectations and the role of being a social care worker. Participants will also be offered an opportunity to practice interview techniques, as well as support with entering immediate employment as the local authority social care worker. This is an excellent opportunity for people who are unemployed, as well as those who are considering changing jobs. So I do hope that members will help promote the event and will let local residents know about it. More details are available on the Council's website or by contacting the Employability Bridgend team. Thank you very much for your indulgence, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Number 6, Social Service Annual Report. I will now ask the Corporate Director, Social Services and Wellbeing, to present this report, which will be accompanied by a PowerPoint presentation. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I think Rachel is going to display the PowerPoint for me this year. For those of you who remember last year's presentation, it was a moment that I would rather forget. So I have gratefully asked Rachel if she would mind driving the slide deck for us this afternoon. So Rachel, if you move on to the next slide, what I'm going to talk to you about this afternoon is the statutory duty that I have as Director of Social Services once a year to take some time within this chamber to advise you on the effectiveness of social services and wellbeing in our county borough. This is the 14th such report that this council will have received over the years, my fourth as your Director of Social Services. The report format is prescribed, so I appreciate it's a very long report for you to go through, and it covers the period from April 2023 to March 2024, so the first deliberate mistake on the slides there. The voice of people is central to the evaluation, and you can see that what we've tried to do this year is to build in some more case studies for you to make sure that we've got feedback from people who directly use our services, as well as the analysis of regulators, myself, and all that performance information there. The report gives us a lot of opportunities. It gives us an opportunity to celebrate success, and particularly to pay our credit and thanks to the workforce and the work that they do for the people with the care and support needs, the most vulnerable people across our county borough. It's an opportunity, and it's important that I advise you on the key issues, risks and challenges facing social services, and also to set out priorities for the coming year. Next slide, please, Rachel. So in terms of my key messages this year, I would say that last year has been a year of setting the foundations for foundational change in social services and wellbeing. What we've seen over the last 4 years really is that we've come through the pandemic, we've come through some very, very significant challenges for our children's social care, and we're back in a position, I would say, as Bridgend County Borough, where our social services are something that we can be really proud of as a county borough. We know that there's more change and there's more improvement that's needed, but that overall we're providing good and effective services for people in a very challenging context of high levels of demand, complex needs of individuals, and financial challenge. So just to draw on that a little bit more and to tell you the key points really from the report, we've had over this last year a significant improvement agenda in children's social care. As you know, we've had significant numbers of inspections over the last number of years, but improvements were noted in our joint inspection of child protection arrangements, which seems like a long time ago now that it happened, but it was back in June of last year. We've had a new strategic direction approved by the council with our Think Family plan for children and families in the county borough, and that's really changing the way we work with children and families, with a focus on prevention, with a focus on really strong relationships with families and understanding the strengths in every family situation. Our quantitative performance has been remarkably good. It's top quartile in Wales in the context of the level of demand and need coming into children's services. More work is needed to address variability in quality. Embedding strength-based models of practice has been a real priority in both adults and children's social care, and is key to the sustainability of what we do, and making sure that we're both effective and cost effective, and always recognise the strengths and resources in every situation. In adult social care, we've had significant change. We've implemented a new operating model, which is described within the report, which really emphasises and strengthens the way that we intervene early and prevent escalation of need. There continue to be many positives. In adult services, we've got our integrated teams, which have been in place for a number of years here in Bridgend, and perhaps we take for granted, but they are still leading edge in terms of the way they operate across Wales. 14 different professional groups sat together, focused on the needs of Mrs. Jones, and really doing excellent work in terms of preventing the need for referrals into other services, because all that resource is one place. We've got really good preventative mental health services, but we need to transform our learning disability services, and as ever we need to improve the way that people flow, not very person-centred word, but the way that we support hospital discharge. Our prevention and wellbeing services continue to be sector leading. We've had another excellent accreditation for our Halo leisure services, but there's a range of ways in which our prevention and wellbeing services have really flexed what they do to support the most vulnerable in our communities, and a lot of those examples are within the report. It's been a good year in terms of our workforce retention and recruitment. We've had significant challenges in recent years, as the Deputy Leader has just said, in terms of recruitment into key posts, but we've made it, we've thought a bit differently, and we've tried to be really innovative, and our international recruits are making a big difference in terms of continuity of work. Our Grow Our Own workers equally making a really big difference in terms of making sure that our workforce planning has significantly been enhanced, and we're far less reliant on agency workers than we once were. We're always stronger in partnership, and our partnerships remain strong with our key statutory and non-statutory partners, but a number of partners have reset their own boundaries and been clearer about what they do. I would highlight changes in the police and probation to that end, to reflect their own pressures and priorities, and that can impact on us and other partners in terms of filling those gaps. So in terms of moving to the next slide, please, Rachel, I think we're on to adult social care. These just give you some of the numbers that we're working with. So nearly 6,000 contacts received in adult social care last year, a little decrease from the previous year, but a significant increase there, a 30% increase, 634 people contacting us with safeguarding referrals. We have assessed people's needs in 1,850 cases. That's a 13% increase from the previous year. And we have had a 24% of assessments of people that we assess progress to a care and support plan, which I think shows how we're working preventatively with people, and that social work itself is the intervention in a lot of cases. We've had a 35% decrease in people waiting on waiting lists for a community occupational therapy assessment, and an 18% decrease in people waiting for a sensory assessment, which is really good news in terms of those critical, quite specialist service areas. And then in terms of the services that people receive, over 2,000 people have care and support plans, which is a 3% decrease, which again, despite the ageing population, shows that we're supporting more people preventatively. Over 500 people in the county borough are supported by us as a council to live in a residential or nursing home. 440 people commenced a domiciliary care service, which is a 4% increase, and 252 people in receipt of a direct payment. And then 2,592 people in receipt of telecare. So that just gives you a sense of the scale. And then if we move on to the next slide, just to highlight really some of the what's working well within adult services. We've had excellent feedback from our inspectors, Care Inspectorate Wales, following their engagement activity in our integrated dementia day service, and highly positive regulatory inspections of any of the in-house care services that they have visited in the last year. And what's really good about those regulatory inspections is the fact that they're highlighting that the care people are receiving is very person-centred in its quality. We've made good progress in embedding our new model of practice, our strength-based outcome-focused practice. Our staff are really embracing working in that way, and our quality assurance mechanisms, which have been strengthened, are showing that that is impacting. We've implemented our new operating model, which I referred to, and that's really focusing on early intervention and prevention and getting those first conversations right. More people are benefiting under that new operating model from those multidisciplinary teams that I talked about. So we've moved more of the services into those multidisciplinary teams. And then we're working very well preventatively with our local community connectors, who now cover all of the county borough. I'm sure you all know who your community connector is, because they're very well known in communities, and each one of them will hold a caseload of over 50 people and supporting them not to have their needs escalate into needing care services. We've reset our reablement services, so we're supporting more people to retain and regain their independence, and our partnerships with Halo and Arwen have really focused their services on the most vulnerable, including things like our Feel Good for Life programme for people living with dementia and their carers, autism-friendly swimming, and would-be and belief. And then just to move to the next slide, this is one of the case studies which is in the report, and I think this case study really reflects the way that we work in a strength-based way. So this is a case study about Jessie, who is 94, living with dementia, but still making a contribution and still able to share her love, in this case of art and painting, with others through the support and the very, very dedicated support of her trainee social worker and a dementia support worker, and making that contribution and raising over £2,000. So that I think this shows that we don't do to people, we work with and we work alongside people and are led by them in terms of understanding their strengths and capabilities. If we move on, Rachel, to the next case study, this is Dean, who lives in Betus. And Dean has been trainee with us in Woodby for a number of years, and now Dean is volunteering in the local library. So this is again another case study which shows how we work with people to understand what matters to them. People with disabilities, the same as all of us, want something to do. They want a sense of purpose, somewhere to go and something to look forward to, and want to make a contribution and to have a job in their own life. And this is a really good example of how we're able to work with our partners to make that happen for people, and support people to be and to live as independently as possible. If we move on to the next slide then, Rachel, this is just talking then about our priorities for improvement in adult social care. So we've got a 3-year strategic plan in children's services. We've got a draft 3-year plan for adult services, but which will come to Cabinet later this year. But we're already working to deliver lots of the things which are within that plan to ensure that we're sustainable as we move forward against the challenges that we face. So what are we doing in terms of those priorities for improvement? So we're embedding the changes in those operating models that I talked about, and we'll do a full evaluation of that operating model in February this year, February next year, which will be a year after we implemented it. We're really focusing on that strength-based outcome focused practice, and particular focus on transforming how we work with people with learning disabilities, recognising that during the pandemic there was a culture of putting lots of support in to keep people safe, and now we're trying to work as we always would wish to support that independence even further. We're focused on improving our front door response and hospital discharge and reablement and that long-term community response. So I know that we had quite a detailed scrutiny session on that earlier this week, because that is a key area for us in terms of making sure that people get the right care from the right person as quickly as possible. Transforming the way that we support people with learning disabilities, mental ill health and other long-term conditions. So part of this is looking at the way that care is provided, as well as the way that we practice social work. So there's a big review of daytime opportunities underway at the moment, a big review of the way that accommodation-based support works, and those reviews will come forward later this year. And then finally, ensure that support for our staff, community engagement, technologies and partnerships are all geared towards sustainable social care. And that word sustainability is very resonant at the moment in light of our financial position particularly. So then if we move on to the next slide, this is just giving some of the information in terms of our children and family services. And as you can see, and I reported last year that I think we'd had an exponential increase in contacts into our children's services. And you can see that despite the fact that last year had the highest ever number of contacts, 2023-24 again had a really, really significant number of contacts through into children's services. So nearly 12,000 contacts, and that's a 43% increase compared to the previous year. Despite that volume, nearly 100%, 99% of decisions on what to do with each of those contacts that comes through are made by the next working day, which is really important because there will be serious safeguarding issues in some of those referrals that come through. We carried out 2,374 assessments, which is a decrease. And how have we decreased despite the fact that that contacts are increasing? That's because we're working more preventatively. We're not putting everybody through a statutory process, and we're able to give information, advice and signposting to more and more people and children and families that come through. Despite that, I think we continued in that last year to have more of those statutory assessments in terms of safeguarding assessments, as you can see there. But our numbers on the Child Protection Register did start to reduce in the last financial year. So by the end of the financial year, children with the most significant safeguarding risks in the county borough, we were supporting 187 children, which was a 30% decrease compared to the previous year. So if we move on to the next slide, in terms of what all of that volume means, what our staff out there doing, you can see there were almost 6,000 visits to children on the Child Protection Register. This part of what we do is very governed by statutory timescales. 87% of those were done within those statutory timescales, which is really excellent performance. At the end of the financial year, we had 370 care experienced children for whom everybody in this chamber is the corporate parent. That was a 7% decrease compared to the end of the previous year. And there were 3,281 visits during that year to those children. Again, really good performance, 85% of those within the statutory timescales. 6% of our care experienced children experienced 3 or more placement moves in a year. Why is that important? Because that's not good to experience those number of moves, and we try and keep that number as low as possible in terms of the disruption that is to a child's life, having to move from care setting to care setting. And then 7% of our care leavers experienced homelessness, which was a 3% increase, I think, reflecting some of the challenges and pressures that there are in housing in the county borough. And 69% of our care leavers were in education, employment and training 12 months after leaving care, but only 58% after 24 months, which shows, again, the challenge and the level of support and joined up working needed in that area for us and our partners. So in terms of what's going well in children and family services, so we've had our 3-year strategic plan approved by the council back in September of last year. We had those improvements noticed in the most recent inspection. Our corporate parenting strategy was launched, and it wasn't just launched by us, but it was launched by the care experienced children themselves. They led the development of the strategy and they led the launch. And for anybody who was there, it was a joyous occasion in terms of their ownership of what we and our partners need to do to effectively support them as they move through their childhood and beyond. We've seen significant improvements in our retention and recruitment of children's social workers. I've talked a little bit already about some of the innovations that we've progressed. During the last year, we did reduce our agency from 55 to 44, and I shouldn't talk about the most recent position, but it has improved significantly further and it's now down to 28, so I couldn't resist putting that on there. We're embedding signs of safety as our model of practice, so 178 colleagues were trained in the last year, and you can see in the report, some of the photos and even the poem that they wrote following the training, because it was really excellent and it really genuinely is transforming the way that people practice. Our new residential care home, Meadows View, was opened for anybody who's had an opportunity to go up there and see it. It's an excellent environment, but most importantly, is providing excellent care and support for children who would otherwise potentially be out of county and out of our area and costing the council a lot more money as well. We've seen a steady but safe reduction in the number of children on the child protection register and indeed the number of care experienced children. And really importantly, from a safeguarding perspective, we've implemented with partners a system called GOS to support information sharing in our multi-agency safeguarding hub. And why is that important? It's important because that was a key recommendation from a very high-profile child practice review, and that's one of the things which has enabled us to really regain and retain the confidence of our regulators as well. So if we move on to the next slide, our priorities for improvement. So we want to continue to improve the engagement and involvement of children and parents and improve the uptake of advocacy, which did reduce in the last year. If you look within the report in terms of some of the feedback we've had in focus groups in the survey, there's clearly more that we need to do in this area. We need to significantly improve our retention and recruitment. So whilst we have improved, and our agency numbers are significantly down, we want to get them down much further and are committed and will do that in this year. Continue to embed our model of practice, signs of safety, and improve quality and consistency. And that's easier to do as numbers come down because we're working with a smaller volume then of children and families. We need to progress more business cases to increase our in-house residential homes. Wales has very progressive legislation which has been laid before the Senedd to eliminate profit from children's social care. And that means that we've got to develop our role as a provider of social care even further. So that's something which is a key priority for us. Need to continue to rebalance early help and support. And this is happening at the moment since the integration of early help at our front door in children's services. And need to continue to support more families and children preventatively in the county borough. Need to continue to improve our fostering service. You can see within the report that there are a number of recommendations from the inspection that we had into Bridgend fostering services, but also we've seen a reduction in the number of foster carers in our in-house service. So again, anything you can do to promote our foster service and to encourage people to consider that conversation, please take that away. We need to continue to build on our joint working arrangements, and that's key to managing that demand and that continued increased demand that you've seen at the front door, particularly with our colleagues in South Wales Police, dare I say. And we need to procure a new fit-for-purpose case management ICT system, and Cabinet considered a report on that yesterday, and that'll be a big change for us in this year. So if we move on to the next slide, this is just an example for you, and it is within the report about how we're working differently with children and families using signs of safety. Key to signs of safety, one of the tools that we've skilled our staff up to use is using words and pictures to communicate with children who are having, you know, some of the most traumatic things happen to them in their lives that any of us could contemplate, i.e. not living with their parents whom they love for a period of time. So this example here is how a young person was supported when they had to not live with dad for a while because of his mental ill health and had to go and move with foster carers. So it just shows you in very simple terms, but terms which really work with the children that we're working with, what our social workers are doing and why that model of practice is so important. So if we move on to the next slide, and probably some of the most difficult slides, you know, I do need to advise you in terms of the risks and issues within the service as well as the positive work that is happening. And by far the most significant risk at the moment, which we're facing across public services and not just social services, is around our financial position. And Part 8 of the Social Services and Wellbeing Act, and I refer to it in the report, requires me to advise you as council on the resources that are needed for effective quality social care. So as you know very well, the spend on social care has increased significantly, both in real terms, but also in proportionate terms, in terms of the council budget. And at the end of the last financial year, we had a very significant overspend against the social services budget of 11.827 million. Significant council support was given and has been given over a number of years in the budget that you agreed as a council for this coming year, particularly support in terms of the children's services workforce, for the real living wage for care workers and other pay and price pressures, and for learning disabilities and for care homes. The biggest single pressure that we face, and I talked about growing our in-house provision, is for children's placements, and this hasn't been supported at the moment in terms of the budget, and I have to advise that this pressure will intensify with that Welsh Government legislation as we develop these new in-house services. And whilst the situation may improve in terms of the number of independent placements, it is a recurring pressure for us as a council and for every other council in Wales. In terms of how we're managing the budget pressures, the report, annual report refers to a recovery plan in place, and that plan is taking forward a range of actions which will link into the future year's medium-term financial strategy as well. So if we move on to the next slide, and I've talked a lot about our models of practice, the key to sustainability and to those recovery plans is continuing to work and reinforcing really the need to work in a strength-based way. And that's through our adult strength-based outcome-focused practice and the children's signs of safety model of practice. And working in that way, and hopefully those case studies illustrate that we identify the strengths and solutions in people and family networks, and we support people to live their lives independent from state intervention and keeping as well as independent as possible. And that really is our focus through those strategic plans and our recovery plans from a financial perspective. If we move on to the next slide, just briefly, the other risks and issues which are cited within the report. I've talked about the move away from profit and the legislation. In the short to medium term, that's really impacting on children's placement sufficiency. And we will at any time have a very, very small number of situations where we are operating and supporting children in settings without registration. And that is a real challenge for us and other local authorities. Social worker and social care worker capacity, which is why all that work around retention and recruitment is so important. and those levels of need, that contact, that those numbers of contacts that come into us that we have to respond to, the levels of complexity of need, which again, I know that Scrutiny talked about earlier this week. You know, our overall workforce position, so it has been an improving position, but it can change very, very quickly and can still be very fragile. So that support for workforce needs to continue. The IT system replacement, which I've talked about, but is a significant risk on our corporate risk register. And I've talked about the pressure on partner agencies and the fact that as they retrench or relook at what they do to meet their statutory duties, it can place additional pressure on us. So if we move to the next slide, if that's okay. I just wanted to finish not on the negatives, but what people are telling us about their experiences, which probably is the most important part of this annual report. People are experts in their own lives, and they are telling us that they are, and this comes from our Youth Voice Forum of Care Experienced Children. We are the experts and the ones in care or leaving care, so should be fully involved at all times. Our focus groups and surveys tell us that people's experiences vary. Some have an excellent experience and some don't, and they're very clear when they tell us when they don't. And it's important that we don't just listen to that and acknowledge it, but we act on it as well and redouble our efforts in terms of that relationship-based way of working. Positively, we have many more compliments than complaints, and most complaints are resolved informally or at stage 1, so a very small number go through for those detailed independent investigations. Our inspections of regulated services found that people in those services were very happy with the care that they received. And our quality assurance has evidenced positive and relationship-based practice. And when we do it really well is when we genuinely don't just listen and engage, but we genuinely co-produce. And a lot of that work in this council has been led by our colleagues in prevention and wellbeing, and you know, really leading edge stuff in terms of working with carers, with Compass, and with our young carers. And if we move on to the next slide, I think this sort of mural, which probably you all drive past and you all, you know, focus on, really reinforces this again in the words of our own young people. And just to read the final sentence on there, and what they're saying to us all really is, listen to our stories, respect our choices, these are our lives, these are our voices, and that's what we, all of us, in terms of our responsibilities, whatever they are around social services and wellbeing, need to be focused on. The next slide then, I suppose, is just another really good example from our prevention and wellbeing service, which is our young carers network, which is led themselves by young carers in terms of what they want to do and what matters to them. And again, it's about them having their voices both heard, but also importantly acted upon. And then just the final slide, a couple of slides then, just in terms of our workforce, and the report pays tribute to the workforce. This is people who go above and beyond every day, and they're working with people on our collective behalves at the most challenging times in those people's lives. So we've got over 1,000 people that we employ as a council in social care and wellbeing, but the social care sector out there is much bigger than that, because most people who work in social care don't work for us as a council. About 3/4 of our services are commissioned. We have improved our recruitment and retention. You know, there's a lovely case study in there about our international recruits. You know, we're growing our own social workers, and we've really as not just Bridgend but across the whole of Wales, taken a very different approach in terms of agency, and that's enabled us to both reduce costs of agency workers, but you know, really manage that whole agency market well as well. We've improved sickness in that last year, but it is still too high in some areas, and we need to continue to focus that and on workforce wellbeing. And our workforce have in this last year, and hopefully the report brings this across, gone through some very significant remodelling and change in key areas. And there is a huge training programme which is set out within the report as well in terms of models of practice. And then just to talk, Rachel's taken the presentation down, just in terms of partnership with this in the report. I've talked a lot about the fact that partnership can be quite challenging, particularly because everybody is in such a resource constrained position and needs to focus on doing what is absolutely fundamental for them. But there's a quote in there from a very senior colleague in South Wales Police, who I have a very healthy professional challenging relationship with, who took the trouble, unsolicited, to email, I think, about the journey that we've been on Bridgend. And he says, "I appreciate getting here has not been easy, but you have an effective model, and we have a healthy relationship and culture. And I will persist in using Bridgend as a case study and advocating for this model. I also acknowledge there's much to do. I know that healthy professional challenges exist, but I believe the data is evidencing the progress we have made." So thank you for your time in setting out the annual report. I'm very happy to take any questions. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Claire, for a very comprehensive presentation. Can I ask for a mover and seconder for the report?
Moved. Second.
Passed, yes. No questions, lovely, thank you. Oh, sorry. Oh, I thought I got away with it then. Councillor Jane Gebby.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I was going to move the report, but that's fine. I just wish to place on record our council thanks to all our staff in social services and a bit of feedback for everyone. We showcased Meadowview as a model of good practice to Welsh Government last week. It was received exceptionally well, and I think that's really important. They said it's excellent practice and the facility is wonderful, and a lot of people in the room have been there even before it opened without any children. And the staff team there are so friendly and welcoming. Also of note is that this week I spoke to Mario Cleft from Care Forum Wales, who was very complimentary of our adult services. He said he knows he's very critical of our adult services and the pay disparities between health and social care workers. But he said our workforce in Bridgend are engaging and energetic, whether that's in the council or whether that's in our private commissioned providers. Thanks very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Williams, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If you could indulge me, please, a moment. I'll be referring to some notes I've just jotted down. I've got a question for the Director for Social Services. If we go back to the adult social care section, where she has said there's a 24% or a 5% decrease to 24% in assessments for care and support plans for people in hospitals. I just wonder where these figures are coming from. I have a personal experience of this, as my father died in the Princess of Wales Hospital after 2 care package appointments were cancelled, and he gave up months after it should have happened. The local democracy reporter, Owen Donovan, has written this morning, Bridgend is above average for 5 or 6 common causes of delayed care transfers. He's got the figures. We are second worst, apart from the only one worse than us is Rhondda and Taff. It says in Bridgend, most of the delays are caused by social care packages and social care assessments. Resultingly, Bridgend is above the Welsh average in 5 of the top 6 reasons for a delayed transfer, with 91 patients in the Princess of Wales Hospital caught in a delay as of August 2024. So where does this 5% decrease come from? If you could please let me know that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question, Councillor Williams. I've indicated that I would like to take this. I can tell you, as I sit on Care Action Wales Forum, that we record data differently. So it doesn't matter which council you are. In Bridgend, we're very clear. So in the Princess of Wales, particularly Cwm Taff Morgannwg, we record our data differently, and it's a true reflection. What I would tell you is that other hospital and arrangements do not give the same figures, and they are not as accurate. We know that we can give you data on a minute's notice because every whiteboard is updated instantaneously. Thank you very much.
Could you please tell me how many people are waiting then for social care packages, if it's that easy to do?
No, I can't, because I don't have access. That would be a breach of everybody's data, but I can find out for you. in
Well,
an instance.
you've just
okay?
said that it's easy. It's on a whiteboard.
But I don't have access to it.
Perhaps the
Councillor
director
Williams.
does.
That would be a breach of data for everybody in the hospital.
How would that be a breach if there are no names?
Councillor Williams, I'll bring the Claire in now, please, if you can answer that.
Yeah, thanks very much for the question. So there's a couple of things that I would say in terms of the data within the annual report. The data in the annual report in terms of number of assessments comes from our own systems. So, you know, our WCCIS system drives a lot of data. It's all got to be validated. It's all got to be reported to Welsh Government. So, you know, I would have confidence in the data that we have. In terms of delayed pathways of care, there was a very detailed scrutiny meeting into this earlier this week. I think it took over 2 hours, the meeting. So there's a recording, I think, which goes into all of this in quite considerable detail in terms of the way that that system works. But what I would say, and what the Deputy Leader has been talking about, is the fact that Cwm Taf Morgannwg Health Board have got a system called electronic transfer of care, which is the whiteboards which she referred to, which is one of the reasons why the figures look the way they do for Cwm Taf Morgannwg local authorities, because we're absolutely confident that absolutely every patient who is on a pathway of care is counted in the right way and is therefore in the right part of the system. This is one of the new innovations in terms of the way that we work with the Health Board that has come in during the last year. And it did cause the numbers to rise, but then I think we are not happy that the numbers have risen, but we are pleased that we have that open and transparent picture in terms of the number of people waiting for a transfer in their care at any moment in time. In terms of the system around transfers of care, and not to repeat everything that the Scrutiny Committee went through earlier of this week, it counts people from the day that they're medically optimised. So it would only give a social worker 2 days to do all the work to assess somebody, understand their best interest, and to support them to move on to their next destination. So at any moment in time, there's always going to be people in those numbers, because it's incredibly important that that work is done very sensitively and in a very person-centred way. So I think we're trying to sort of reframe the narrative a little bit in terms of the way that we talk about that, because after somebody's been in hospital for a period of time, it will take a little while, and for some people quite some time, to make sure that they are supported on to their next destination. But as I say, I know that the Scrutiny Committee spent a lot of time on this earlier this week.
Thank you, Claire.
Could I just interject and ask how many people are actually waiting then, please? If we've got an up-to-date system, which is just a number, doesn't breach anyone's data protection, how many people are actually waiting at the moment? Thank you.
I will come back to you with that figure, Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Graham Walter, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Claire, and your team for a very comprehensive report, which was far more positive in tone than previous ones we've seen. And it was really pleasing to see that an issue that we spent a lot of time talking about a year or so ago around recruitment and retention is improving significantly. Just looking at the page on risks and issues, if we take the financial situation out of the equation, I know it's easy to say, not easy to do, which one of them is the one that perhaps gives you the most cause for concern, please? Thank you.
I think here today, the one that gives me the most cause for concern is the system change. That's the one, if we think about the way we manage risk as a council, that's escalated it as a risk on its own right on the corporate risk register. And there are a number of reasons for that. You know, we're wholly reliant in terms of the way we work on an electronic system. All of our case management information, all of our safeguarding information is on that electronic system. So we took a paper to Cabinet yesterday which talked about the stage of procurement. So it'll be one step, won't it, in order to secure a new supplier. Then we have to go through a very, I suppose, sensitive process about transferring a significant amount of personal data relating to individuals from one system to another, and that is inherently risky. So in terms of the big changes that are coming up over over the next year or so, it's that one which, you know, has been escalated significantly onto our risk register, and I think that we're most concerned about.
Thank you very much, and thank you once again for a largely positive report. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much as well to Claire and her team, because over the year I've had the pleasure of scrutinising this as Chair of Scrutiny for Social Services, and I can say that officers from Claire downwards have worked exceptionally hard to pull back from what was a very difficult situation not that long ago, and that's been done with working well with Councillor Gebbie as well. So thank you very much to all the team there. One of the key ways that we've done this is through innovation in this directorate, and that's been key to the changes that have been made. However, innovation hasn't come without an overspend, and we can see that it's 11.827 million, which is an exceptionally high amount. So my question, and I don't know if this is going to be a political question, so be prepared, Councillor Gebbie, maybe coming to you. Obviously, we will need to make financial adjustments. That's quite obvious. But will that potentially jeopardise the good work being done? And if so, how do you plan to mitigate so that there isn't a backward step on the good work that we have done so far? Thank you.
I don't think I could give you any reassurance that we're not going to overspend at this point this year. I think we're continuing to innovate about the way we deliver things. We are looking at community best paced. We are looking at with all partners. We do all manner of work with partnerships because that's always easier. What I would say is we don't rely on just social services officers to deliver things. We may look at Halo. We may, you know, and I know Halo and Arwen come under my portfolio, but that's not quite the same thing. We do look at them because early intervention and prevention is always better. Indeed, when I was talking to a geriatrician earlier this week, one of the things that she said to me is we all have a responsibility to look after ourselves. We were talking about dementia and the rise in dementia cases, and part of that is due to lifestyle. It's about drinking when you're young, if you're overweight, if you don't have an active lifestyle. There are all manner of things, but actually as a community we need to take responsibility for each other. I don't know if any of you have seen the press this week. Part of that was around, I want to say Japan or China, but they have a legal responsibility to look after their parents when they age. They have to go and make sure that they are fed every day and that they take their tablets every day. There is no package of care available to people. We have an over-reliance on public services. We are working from a signs of safety perspective, specifically in children, because we need parents and other responsible adults and family members to take that responsibility on, because children will always vote with their feet. If we decide that we're going to move a child because of the risk, actually, sometimes that risk is increased because we've moved them. And the first thing they're going to do is a runner, straight back to wherever they've just come from. So we need to consider the way we are doing things. Can I give you any reassurance, Councillor Bledsoe? We'll continue what we're doing. We are making strides in our directorate. The staff are working immensely hard, and the sheer demand coming through the doors is not going down at the minute, is what I want to say, because it's not. And when I look at adult services is only going to increase. We have an ageing population. They have lots more comorbidities. I don't know how we're going to do it. We haven't got a birth rate either. So if all of you think that you're going to get care at home when you're older, actually, we haven't got the youngsters around to deliver that care to you. So we all need to think about our lifestyles, our habits, and take some responsibility for ourselves. Thanks very much. And I'm sure that I haven't answered what you wanted, but you know.
Sorry, with your indulgence, can I come back? Is that okay? You're quite right. It doesn't quite answer the question that I've asked, as interesting as it is. However, I think we all appreciate that if we are to shave the 11.8 million that we're on an overspend at the moment, that will negatively impact, won't it?
We're not on an 11 I want to say it's just over 6 million at this point, Claire.
It's reported as
and it's coming down every quarter.
11.8 million on
That's
the
for last
overspend.
year. That was for last year.
Right.
So we were at 6 million at Q1 this year,
Right.
but that is reducing month on month because of the strides that we're taking, and some of that is around the development of Meadowsview, putting children in there rather than putting into independent residential care.
Apologies, you're quite right, and that's my mistake. However, the 6 million that we're overspent on, we are going to have to pull back on that, aren't we? And that in itself will have a negative impact on what we're achieving, because we're on a headway path with a plan, aren't we?
Claire, would you like to come in on that?
I'm sure Caris would do it far better than myself. What we've put in front of council in terms of children's social care is obviously a 3-year sustainability plan, and we've got a 3-year sustainability plan which will be considered by Cabinet in this autumn around our adult social care. Now, what that tries to do is to combine, early intervention and prevention, a permanent, stable workforce who've got the time to build strong relationships with people and practice in that strength-based way, and cost-effective ways of providing services. And that's quite a seismic change. But if we think about the children's 3-year strategic plan, which is only a year old, we're already seeing that significant changes as a consequence of that. I referred in the presentation to the reduction in the number of children on the child protection register at the end of year. It's quite significantly reduced since then. Now, all of that will impact on cost, because there's costs associated with people being in those statutory parts of the system, and we're trying to shift the work that we do and work with people far more preventatively, which is better for them, and also better for the budget and more cost effective for the budget. So that's, I guess, in terms of how we move from where we are now and what the Deputy Leader has described as this over-reliance in some parts of what we do on public services to somewhere where people, are supported to recognise their own strengths, the resources available to them to work in a different way. Can I say, as your statutory director, that's going to address all of the budget position that we're in at the moment? No, but is it going to make us far more sustainable in the medium and long term and help us to reduce that level of overspend? Yes, I can say that. And we're seeing some of that evidence already, particularly through that work in children's, which has had a good year now in terms of that new way of operating.
Thank you, Claire. Okay. Councillor Martin Williams, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Claire, for the report. And it's quite interesting hearing some of the contributions so far. We're 3 months in now to a new government. It's quite obvious that given the 22 billion black hole that has been discovered, there's no new money coming. So whether it's an overspend or whether it's budget pressures on social services generally, it's clear that any new money there or any additional financing is not really going to come externally. It's going to come from within. Now, in recent years, the Cabinet Member for Social Services has been very successful in protecting and indeed growing her budget. And I would suggest it's fairly obvious that has been at the expense of education. We've seen education cuts across the board. I think it's 5% over the last 2 years, a blanket cut, rather than targeted cuts to schools based on their individual needs and circumstances. And of course, we've now seen the proposed cut to home to school transport. So really, I guess it's a question to Claire, because it's a professional question. I mean, clearly there's a political dimension should Councillor Gadby wish to come in, and I always appreciate her interventions. Are you beginning to see pressures on the social services budget and indeed the social services service generally as a result of these cuts to education? Because again, both of you have said early intervention and prevention is always better, and it doesn't really get earlier than the school environment. So are we seeing pressures as a result of the cuts that have already been put onto education? And given the pressures that we understand will further come on education in future years, do you predict that actually, in reality, we're in a vicious circle here and we'll be robbing education budgets to pay for social services budgets, and in turn put greater pressure on social services budgets. And I'd welcome perhaps the political question is how we break that cycle, given the £22 billion black hole. Thanks.
Claire, do you want to come back, please?
What I'd say is that we've got key partners in education, and we work very, very closely with our schools in terms of both prevention and safeguarding and protecting our children. You know, we've taken forward some significant changes in the last year around early help and prevention to focus that resource at those edge of statutory services, and Council was minded to support further investment in preventative services as part of the budget that came forward this year. And I think that joined up working between social services and wellbeing and education helps to mitigate some of those risks that are described, and it makes it even more important that we use the resource that we have got available and the workforce that we have got available to us in a very targeted way at those points when people's needs can escalate. So I would say that work is very effective between the two directorates. I would say, are there pressures in school around behavioural issues? Clearly they are. Those significant pressures, and do we work together to support those children and young people where those issues are in place, and try and use the resource that we've got available to us in the most effective way, and indeed with other partners such as CAMS, Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services, and other preventative services. Yes, we do, but clearly the strain on all of public services and the challenges that our children and young people face is going to be something significant for us as a council as we move forward, regardless of where those budgets sit. It is a challenge for us, undoubtedly.
Thank you, Claire. Councillor Ian Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Much has been said about the good work that Halo do with regards to health and well-being. They've been lauded for their work, and rightly so. Why on earth are we even talking about bringing leisure back in-house? Is this the new socialist ideal that this council is going to implement?
Can I interject there? Sorry. Councillor Gabby.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mrs. Mayor, Madam Mayor, even.
Call me what you like, you're all right.
We're not, so I don't know where you've heard that misinformation, because it clearly is misinformation in relation to leisure services being returned in-house. Indeed, what we spoke about was an extension of a contract, so that's very different. That is not bringing in-house. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, but I thought that extension was to explore the possibility of bringing it back in-house.
No, very definitely not.
Oh.
Councillor John Spanswick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to for record a few points raised by Councillor Martin Williams regards to the education budget. Correct, yes, the last 2 years we had to share the pain, and has taken a cut. But I'd like to remind him of the previous years when we protected the budget. When there were proposals for cuts, we decided to protect and not make the cuts. But also to remind him there's another directorate involved called the Communities Directorate, which provides the visible services out there, and have suffered disproportionate cuts because we protected education. I'm not saying that's good or right or wrong, but let's not just be choosy and political in picking the last 2 years. Let's look over a period of time, and also remember the people who vote for you when they vote for what they see outside the front door. The services we've had to cut disproportionately over the years to protect other services. Now we're all across the board. We have to look at all the services. The pain is not great with the budget, and we don't know what might come from Westminster. The autumn statement will be the end of October. So who knows what will happen? So unless you know more than I do that we're not getting any money, probably we won't, but you don't know. So let's not assume things, and let's not be selective with our figures, just looking at the last 2 years.
Councillor Jonathan Pratt, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to say a thank you, really. I'm glad that compliments are higher than complaints. Obviously, complaints are right and we should deal with them. But having my brother-in-law move into full-time care over the summer, I'd like to thank this service for the professionalism that they supplied for that one. The support they gave my in-laws and my brother into what was a very emotional move. Reassuring that my in-laws are not failing, despite being in their 80s and their early 60s, as parents and carers. My wife, who's been a young carer and an adult carer for some 37 years, it was very difficult. The stares I got as a county councillor from my in-laws on what can you do to assist. So I'd like to thank Councillor Gebby, who helped in situations I think I personally would have had a direct conflict if I exercised my power in this chamber to assist my family. So I'm very pleased that compliments are higher than complaints, and I would encourage everyone that if you see good service, do put in compliments, because social care is a very hidden service, though very public, and I don't think people really realise what happens in it unless you are involved in it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Pratt. Thank you. No more questions. Can I take the members to the report recommendations and ask if they are all in favour, please?
Aye.
Thank you very much. I'll now move on to item 7, urban and capital equipment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good afternoon, all. As members will have seen and read this report, I won't repeat the detail. I will, however, make some summary highlights for members. This is a relatively short report that seeks council approval for a proposed amendment to the capital programme to incorporate a capital budget of £340,000 to be vied from an existing Ravenscourt capital budget, and it will be in order to provide and deliver funding for the equipment needed for the grass cutting service. I'll highlight to members paragraph 2.2 of the report, a reminder that in January 2024, Cabinet approved a report seeking approval for officers to work towards reintroducing an in-house delivery of the urban and rural grass cutting service. I'll also highlight paragraph 2.3 of the report, that yesterday a report was presented to Cabinet, effectively asking Cabinet to approve this report coming to Council, and Cabinet gave the go-ahead, approved this request or recommendation. Section paragraphs 3.1 to 3.6 of the report I won't go through, but they summarise the steps taken towards the purpose of bringing the service back in-house. I would next highlight section 8 of the report to members. Paragraph 8.1 states the value of required capital, as previously stated, £340,000. Paragraph 8.2 clarifies that currently no specific capital budget currently exists for this purpose. Paragraph 8.3 identifies where the money can be made available from. Paragraph 8.4 to 8.6 outline what forms effectively the recommendation at 9 at the end of the report. Paragraph 8.7 again highlights Cabinet's approval to bring this recommendation to Council. I'll take members to point 9 of the report, and 9.1 it is proposed that Council agree the proposed virement of £340,000 in the capital programme for the delivery of urban and rural grass cutting in-house, with funds being vied from the existing Ravenscourt capital budget. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Paul Davis, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the report initially. I'd like to give my thanks firstly, Madam Mayor. I'd like to give the thanks to the contractors which have kept this service going over the last 5+ years, and but it's now time for change, and the decision has been made to bring the service back in-house, and I support that decision. I've worked with officers for many months now to sort of get this service back in-house, and there's been budget talk and there's been revenue talk, but the decision made to insource this service is because the contract needs to be in-house so that we can develop the service going forward. The current contracting out system is very limiting. We need to give a dynamic service which we can drive forward in the future, which will ultimately lead, not this year, but in future years, Madam Mayor, to consolidating the service, which would bring efficiencies going forward, which we can't do if it's contracted out. So that is why I support the service being brought back in-house. The Parks Department, it needs to be looked at to, as I say, to incorporate the service, so we haven't got this position within today where one group of people cut one little bit of the grass, someone comes along tomorrow and cuts another bit of the grass, and leaves us in an odd position where I don't think it works for anybody personally, and we've all had the complaints to sort of show that in our inboxes, no doubt, over the years. So that is my statement on the matter, Madam Mayor, and I move the report. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now go on to Councillor Ross Thomas, please.
Yeah, diolch, Mr Mayor. Sorry, Madam Mayor. Sorry, again.
Shall I do a Vicar of Dibley?
I'm so sorry, Madam. I've known you many years as well. I'm sorry. Thanks very much for calling me in. Look, I'm going to need some help here to see the why, because in my view, the report is scant on the detail of the logic for the change in the service provision, which is pertinent to the request today for finances. Now, were I a cabinet member and were I not faced with the financial difficulties in which we find ourselves, on a matter of principle, I would likely favour the exploration of in-house delivery in parts of the council. That's my view. However, that really isn't a luxury that we are afforded currently, far from it. We've been told in no uncertain terms that this council faces challenges which are unprecedented, and I think most of us are acutely aware of the seriousness of the financial situation that we face. The leader, in his press comments just 2 months back, warned of an ongoing national funding crisis and that the council would need to be hugely different moving forward, while the Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources spoke of difficult choices and how we must, and I quote, consider which services can continue, which ones might be provided by alternative organisations, and which may need to undergo significant change or else stop altogether, close quote. Presumably all of these things are on the table to save money. Yet we find ourselves here today being asked to stump up £340,000 in capital funds. Now, I'm more concerned that we're not seeing the bigger picture here. Absolutely, I get that this is a capital report, but there is an inextricable link with the ongoing revenue implications alluded to by the Cabinet Member of bringing a service in-house. So I sought some figures this week. The existing revenue budget for urban and rural grass cutting is 250k. That contract came to an end in March of this year, and it's recognised in the previous Cabinet report that the budget would likely have had to increase, as many other things have, to take account of inflation, staff pay, etc. However, the revenue needed for in-house is nearer 530k. I remember we had a protracted debate just a couple of months ago on saving £20,000 just a couple of months back on the livery of recycling vehicles. Most of us were there. Do you remember the protracted 30-minute debate? These sums that we're talking about today dwarf that conversation. So in essence, we scrapped the 120k saving that we made back in 2015 by having the contractors take on the work. We spend a one-off 340k in capital today, and then we commit ourselves to 530k year on year, which minus the existing revenue budget means an additional 270k that's not currently budgeted for. That's not investing to me. This is investing and then spending a lot more. So perhaps the leader or any cabinet member can make this make sense against the backdrop of, I quote, difficult choices. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I'll fetch Councillor John Spanswick in, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Ross Thomas. This is more than just comparing the past contract for one area of service to what we're trying to do going forward. This is more than that. This is about bringing the service of all green spaces into one way forward, rather than this disjointed service we have currently. Okay, there was 240k revenue budget was being spent on the contract, which was 5 years old, and it didn't end this year. It actually ended in last March. We've carried on additional delegate powers this year because we weren't in a position to start doing the contract. So who knows what the actual contractual cost would be if we back up the tender. It definitely wouldn't be 240k, because the 240k doesn't even cover the staff costs that allegedly are currently being used on the contract. So there's appears to be a loss-leading figure that was originally put in. Can't prove that 5 years ago, but you can guarantee that figure would not be the figure now to this service. And that's just one part of what we're talking about, the green service. So the figures are high, that's there, but that's talking about changing the service going forward and bringing things together from all green areas, but also when you talk about the areas like litter picking, when it comes to these highway routes that are done, there's traffic management involved. That's now built into these figures. There was no budget for traffic management previously, but we couldn't use the traffic management put forward by the contractor to do our own litter picking, which from Joe Public's point of view, they don't see sense in coning the road off one day to grass cut and then separately having to cone the road off to do litter picking, especially when we don't even have a budget to do that. We've now gone through and come up with some realistic figures of what the realistic costs to do a sort of seamless service, not just grass cutting, but the environment out of the green spaces. There's areas in there to deal with biodiversity, which we haven't been doing very well. So there's lots more than just looking like for like. We're not just talking about replacing contracted service for one part of the green space, where we're now looking to bring all green spaces into one service area. It won't happen overnight, and it won't happen over next year, but it's going to take a year or two to get everything working. So there's a lot more of a joined up pattern going forward, and it will bring savings financially longer term, but there's a lot more work we've done on that. Plus also looking after the environment more sensibly and being able to deal with cut and collect areas and encouraging biodiversity. So there's a lot of work been going on, there's a lot more work to be done, but we need to get control of the service and not rely on a contractor where if they want to change them in, we have to pay extra to do something extra. And to be honest with you, in this room, the service this year hasn't been good enough for the contractor. There's lots of areas haven't been cut. We don't have resources to monitor the contract. So this needs to be a lot better going forward and having it in-house and controlling it in-house. And we'll be responsible for providing a quality service out there. But initially up front, these costs are higher. They're not just comparing contract service to what we're talking about. It's not comparing like for like.
Madam Mayor, can I?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, yes, coming back in, thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, I'm sorry, this doesn't make sense to me against the backdrop of some of the most horrific financial conversations that I've had, I would say in the last 2 or 3 months around the budget pressures that we are facing. To then be looking at money from the capital programme, obviously that's one-off, but that ongoing revenue commitment of £520,000, which currently isn't accounted for, minus the 250 that we previously spent on the contract on an annual basis. It's making little sense to me, given the financial situation that we face. So are you confirming, Councillor Spanswick, that we've not tested the market to look at what savings could be made as opposed to bringing in-house? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Thomas, can I have Councillor Amanda Williams in, please?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Firstly, I think you should charge £10 for everyone who calls you Mr. Mayor for your charity. But Councillor Ross Thomas stole my question, and my follow-up question then he just asked. So I've had to quickly think of another question, because I fully agree with everything that he said there, and the answers he's been given should have been detailed in this report if we're trying to rely on all of that. So my question will now be, given that we've got a number of vacancies in the local authority, if we were to bring this in-house, how confident would we be in filling these vacancies? Because we're already struggling in a number of vacancies in communities. Thank you.
Councillor John Spanswick, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Williams. Of the posts required for this, only 2 are permanent posts, which is the 12 posts are seasonal posts.
Councillor Martin Williams then, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just save myself a tenner then. I don't know where to begin, really. I've got so many thoughts running through my mind about this one. Councillor Thomas and Councillor Williams have covered a lot of the ground, but I have to say, in the 2.5 years I've been a councillor, which albeit isn't that long, this is one of the weakest reports I've ever read. It explains nothing. It asks for £340,000, doesn't answer any of the questions. And as Councillor Thomas said, we're left wondering what on earth it's all about. I mean, There's nothing in there. There's not a sausage. Nothing there. What are we buying with this equipment? What's the cost saving? What's the return on investment? There's nothing in there. If this was a business, if this is one of the businesses I've worked on, and some of you guys as well, if I went to an investment committee with a 3-page report, and bear in mind half of that is preamble, and asked for £340,000, my feet wouldn't touch the ground before I was thrown out the door. What is it for? I'm not against insourcing on principle. I'm a pragmatist. If it works, it works. If it works, let's spend £1 million on it. But this is my question. It's actually not a question directed where you might think. It's a question to Carys and a question to Councillor Howell-Williams, who ultimately are the custodians of our resources, our financial resources. And my question is this: what process has there been through? And you know that I have concerns about our management of the capital programme. What processes have been through to vet this expenditure, and to prove to me that if there is spare cash in the Ravenscourt budget, that this is the best use of it? How have we determined that this report, or this use with the report, has nothing in it other than the request? How do we know that £340,000 is best spent here and not best spent on another budget area, or another area that might deliver a better return? Because I cannot support this report. I cannot support it. But I would like that question answered by Carys and Councillor Williams, please.
Thank you, Councillor Martin Williams. Carys, would you like to answer, please?
Yeah, I can. Thank you very much for those comments and for that question, Councillor Williams. I can assure it. Well, there was a council's cabinet decision about this service earlier on this year. The reason why it's coming in now is because in order to help them bring the service in-house, they need to buy the relevant equipment in order to get that up and running for the next season. The ordering time on that equipment is such that they have to place those orders, I understand, by the end of September. Otherwise, we run the risk of not having the right equipment in place to run that service next year. That's the reason why this is coming in at this particular time. I can assure you that we have challenged the service with regards to the cost of the equipment and what is required. And based on their experience and advice that they have had from external sources, it's understood that this is the level of equipment that we need to purchase. So we have done some work behind the scenes before this report has come to you this evening to actually verify those figures and to ensure that that is what is needed to provide the service that is required ongoing.
Thank you, Carys. Councillor Mark John.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, I think as councillors being put under undue pressure again to agree on something by the end of this month. But the question I would like to ask, has anything already been bought? And that's a direct question. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Carys, would you like to come back? Or Zach?
Yeah, for this service, no.
All right with that one? Councillor Ross Thomas, I believe, wants to come back for a question of clarification. Councillor Ross Thomas?
Yeah, thank you. In my contribution earlier, Madam Mayor, I said that the contract expired on the 31st of March 2024, and that was disputed by Councillor Spanswick. I'm reading the Cabinet report of the 17th of January, and it says there on paragraph 2.2, the current contract expired on the 31st of March 2024. And that's significant because Councillor Spanswick is suggesting that the cost was the cost of 240,000 was some years before. So can I have some clarification that was when the current contract expired, and what the budget was up to annually for that year, 31st of March, to end in 31st of March 2024. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Spanswick?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. My apologies, Councillor Ross Thomas. Time flies. It was March 2024, the end of the contract. End of this year, then we've continued with extensions of the contract and through delegated powers this year. And it was I got 240 bed, maybe 250, 240 or 250 is the figure. So it's the contract that was awarded 5 years previously.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Ian Williams, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just wondering if we're going to bring this this service back in-house. Councillor Ross Thomas has done some work and said that the cost on an ongoing revenue basis would be £500,000 a year. What work have we done to see what the cost is to outsource, and what is the difference? What is the saving that we'll make by bringing this back in-house? Surely we've done that exercise.
Zach, would you like to come in on that, please?
No, the market has not been tested to outsource it again.
Well, I don't understand. So we're bringing it in-house
at an
increased cost without actually testing the water to see if it would be cheaper to outsource.
Councillor Spancic, who would like to come in.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just remind Councillor, this Cabinet and this Council made decision, or the Cabinet made decision in January this year to bring the service in-house.
At zero cost.
Can I continue? As far as testing the market, we haven't tested the market directly in this one, but the guarantee is that market prices are increasing. I'll give you an example from weed spraying. Several years ago, we cut the budget for weed spraying from 3 cuts to 2. At that time, I think it was something like £11,000 per spray. Then we put it back up, and then last year we brought it back down again. But over those years, the last 4 or 5 years, from £11,000 per spray, we're now paying £32,500 per spray. And that's just one small example of the type of environmental services we deal in. That's tripled in cost in the last couple of years. So there's quite clear evidence out there that contracts are increasing. That's a fact of life. You know, there's no magic wand there to have a contract with grass cutting. It's going to be the same price now that it was 5 years ago or 6 years ago. Costs are definitely increasing. They could even be doubling. So
I agree with that, Councillor Spanswick, but you're making an assumption that it'll be cheaper to bring it in-house.
I'm making an assumption. We made a decision as...
That's fine, but it says in January it was going to be brought back in-house with zero cost.
It was to be contained within that budget, but that, after doing a lot of work with that and looking at the details behind it, and there's been a report that's been done, a consultant have looked into that previously, and that makes it clear that cost is not realistic for the service that's been provided. So there's a big question about what is being provided. I'm not going to be critical of the contractor because they've done some good work, but the cost of 240 was tendered for is not anywhere near enough to provide the resources to do that contract sufficiently.
But on the decision that you made in January...
Yeah, decision made and we're standing by. Thank you, Councillor Williams.
Yeah, but the decision was made on the basis that zero cost of bringing it back in-house. So where's the 340,000 come from now? Never mind. Thank you.
Councillor Paul Davies, please.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. I can't see how we could say, I wasn't there at the time, obviously, but we can see zero cost. The cost was £240,000 per annum. Then, do you mean additional costs? Do you? Is that what you're saying? Or I don't know. It's got to be zero cost, can it? And things go up, don't they? The officers have estimated it would be I think it's 290 in the report, or 280. Well, that's pie in the sky, as Councillor Spanswick has just said. You've been lucky that, it would have been 100 grand on that contract easily. So at the very least, the last 5 years, we've had a cost of living crisis. Everything's tripled in price. We all know there's no way on earth anyone was going to come in at 240 for this contract. So I can't understand how this thing about zero. I don't get the point you make again. Sorry.
Councillor David Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to agree with everything that everybody has said so far. I can't condone spending that type of money when we've got nothing to compare it against. Now, we've got a figure of 340,000. Is that just to buy the equipment, or is that for wages? We have seasonal workers. We have trouble employing people at the best of times. So are we going to be able to get these seasonal workers in, even if it does come in-house? Is there any guarantee of that? All we've got is say so on one side. We haven't got anything to compare costs against. So I can't condone this, in my opinion. Thank you.
Councillor John Spanswick, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The 340k clearly is capital. That's for purchasing equipment, and that's the only item on the report today is asking about capital equipment. And I accept there's lots more to discuss about the whole service, but the report we have before us today, Madam Mayor, is about 340k for capital equipment, and it's more than just replicating the contract that was done before. This is for the service and to future-proof the service going forward, to deal with the whole green space services, or whatever you want to call it. It's more than just, it's not comparing like for like, it's talking about looking for the future, to future-proof the service, but it is capital investment we're talking about today.
Councillor Jonathan Pratt, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I suppose efficiency comes in different ways, and if things are going up, it is what it is. But I suppose an efficiency, and I would like assurance from the Cabinet. Councillor Davis will know what I'm going to say without giving away the particular case, the madness that exists sometimes in this authority of who owns which bit of grass, whether it's parks, highways, and that can take weeks and weeks and weeks to identify who owns that particular piece of green space before it's even rectified. Is this a start to rectifying that it comes under one umbrella, that if there is an issue that it will be quickly sorted, and that in itself would be an efficiency? And if that is the case, and I do hope it's true, I am minded to support this. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Paul Davis.
Yeah, I thank you for that, Councillor Pratt. I know the bit of ground you're referring to. We had some fun with that. Can I just go back to Councillor Harrison's point about employing staff, Madam Mayor? My son has worked for Neath Talbot Council as a seasonal grass cutter for about 5 or 6 years now, Councillor Harrison. And over there, every January time, February time, they conducted interviews to when they put the ads out for the jobs. So I don't see any difference here. You know, if it's the job is attractive enough, people will come. That's my opinion, and it happens over there. And you know, I will have to assume it'll happen here. But time will tell.
That's assuming.
Zach, please.
Just on employing seasonal staff, yeah, absolutely. As Councillor Davis has just described, we go through an interview process and put out advertisements for seasonal staff at the start of the season. It can be flexible in terms of, I mean, you'll get a mixture of some seasonal staff that will return to the same type of job year after year. And then there may be others that, because it's a seasonal job and they can see the end come in, might find a more permanent position somewhere and move on. And that's the nature of the work. And where that happens, we have other options such as use of agency to fill in gaps, etc. So that's the typical approach that would be taken.
Thank you for that. Councillor Ian Spiller, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I share in the Cabinet's wish to deliver a more joined up service. And I go back to the Cabinet papers from January 2024, and I'll bring you to page 129 and item 8.1, which was one of the things that the Cabinet decision was made on, which simply says the cost for reintroduction of the service provision is to be delivered from existing budgets. The staffing structure and equipment is currently being provided by an external provider, the cost of which is being met by the authority through contract value. So it is envisaged that sufficient funding is available within the existing budget to establish an in-house service and procure the requisite plant and equipment to facilitate the work activities. Any potential increases in costs will have to be managed for a review of the level of service provision to remain within allocated budgets. Now, clearly that's a change in circumstance for what's being asked of us today, because as Councillor Ross Penhale Thomas points out, we're faced with some quite dire decisions over the next few months. And in fact, as we go into the budget setting process, we're going to be talking about social services, we're going to be talking about overspends, we're going to be talking about cutting education budgets and obviously the things that go with that. So I have to ask the question, given that the circumstances have changed, would it not be right just to reflect and say, actually, we should go and test the market, we should go and look what savings can be made by subcontracting, and we should perhaps use our resources better to deliver a better pound for our public? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spiller. Bring in Councillor John Spanswick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to answer the question Councillor John and Pat raised, because it's a very good point. And within the revenue figures, there is something there which we haven't had to date, and that software system to come up with more efficient routing system to make sure we manage the areas. The work scheduling, perhaps it's not that great at the present. It needs a modern, updated system to allow work scheduling to get the best performance, the best sort of routes out of things, and to make sure that all areas are covered. And the Councillor Spiller now saying about the current contract and within the envelope of the 240k, it's quite clear that we haven't had the resources to monitor that contract. There's this going forward is trying to make sure we maintain all the areas a lot better. It'll take time as a service change needs to take place, but the current contract is not performing. It's not, lots of areas not being done. So after looking at the details of what the contract has been over the last years, if you're all happy with the grass areas you've seen in the last 12 months or the maintenance of the green areas, well, please put your hand up, because I, for one, I'm not happy with what I've seen in the last year. It's not great, and we need to do better. We can do better, but it has to be done looking across the council, accept the fact we're in difficult financial times. But this is about taking the service forward, future-proofing it for the future, and making it, more joined up across not just grass cutting, litter, other parts of the service. This is about making the service better for the future, but accept the fact there's some costs up front. But we cannot continue the past way. We made a decision in January about bringing this in-house. Now we've had further details. It's clear there's costs involved. We can't hide from that. That's there. But let's be realistic. What we're trying to do is to make a more streamlined, future-proof service for the longer term, not just for this year or next year.
Thank you, Councillor Spanswick. Councillor Howell Williams.
Madam Mayor, may I just quickly come back on that, seeing as the leaders just made that point, and that is just to say that there is far more than one contractor that cuts grass in Bridgend County, and if we're not having a good enough service from one, we're not tied to them. We can look at other providers to see if we can get better value for money and better service. Thank you.
Councillor Howell Williams.
Madam Mayor, if you mind, I don't mind giving way to other speakers, and I can come in later on in the debate if that's okay for you.
Beg your pardon. 10 minutes, gentlemen. Ladies will go at a gentle pace. The metal rich.
Richard's going first, I think.